We'd now like to welcome David Southam of Mincor Resources. Thank you, David. David joined Mincor in February 2019 as Managing Director. He's a Senior Business Executive and Company Director of ASX-listed and private enterprises spanning a range of industries, including logistics, technology, contracting, banking, philanthropy. He's been intimately involved in several large project financing and multi-billion-dollar offtake arrangements in multiple jurisdictions. He has extensive, significant corporate transactions, including substantial divestments and acquisitions into both private equity and small to large ASX corporations. David has well over a decade of experience in battery metals through his non-executive director role at Mincor Resources, which was acquired by Wesfarmers and intimate involvement in the nickel sulphide industry. Prior to Mincor, David was Executive Director of ASX 200 nickel company Western Areas and has held senior executive roles with Brambles, ANZ Investment Bank, WMC Resources. He's currently Non-Executive Director of Ramelius Resources and a council member and chair in the Audit and Risk Committee for Curtin. Welcome, David.
Thank you. I think that's a little bit too long. Look, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Michael, for the introduction. Thanks to Diggers and Dealers again for giving Mincor a fantastic slot. When I look over to my right, I see some pretty amazing stories, and so it's great to be included in that. You know, it feels like we've actually got the Reed corporate boxing stable here with us, actually. All being clients of Reed Corporate. I don't know whether that was organised, probably was, by Paul Armstrong. But there's an old adage in Kalgoorlie that when both gold and nickel are going well, things are pretty buoyant in the mining industry. And if you have a look at prices today, and whilst I saw Jake Klein's presentation that gold has been tough, it's not that tough, at US $1,800 per ounce. Nickel is giving US $20,000 a tonne, a pretty good nudge. And I saw Ken on ABC News last week, I think, talking about lithium prices last Friday hitting $1,250 a tonne. So despite some of the labour challenges that we're all aware of, market conditions are buoyant. But as a nickel producer, well, about to be nickel producer, I'm very aware of the one thing that will destroy high nickel prices is high nickel prices, and so we will be a little bit conservative in that regard. But also speaking to the health of the sector, I think it's actually the first time it's happened, or it's the first time in my recollection, that you've actually got two Kiwis opening up the batting this morning, which is very good, followed by two underarm bowling Aussies. So that's, sorry, I can't. There's some things, I'm on the spectrum with some things, and that's one of those things. I can't let that go. And I also can't let Stu Tonkin off the hook as well. I remember being here last year at Diggers, and poor Mark Zeppner and myself, we thought we were pretty special. We're up there day one, session one, but we had the marriage of Northern Star and Saracen, and so we actually got kicked off the lectern and felt like COVID patients in isolation down on the front seat. So it's good to see that Stewie's obviously cleaned house and cleaned out a few executives and given us a bit of room at the lectern, so thank you very much, Stewie. Now, on a more serious note, and why I'm here and putting strong commodity prices aside, I'd like to give you a few insights into what we're doing at Mincor, how we're actually building a sustainable business that's not just capable of performance in good times, but also when times get tough and you have the inevitable up and downs that we've seen in our industry. So a quick snapshot of where we are today, and if I think about 12 months ago, nickel price is up about 4,500 Aussie per tonne, sitting today at about Aussie $12 a pound. Our market capitalisation is up around 50% from last year, and over the last 3 years is up about 700%, so we're certainly underperforming Bellevue when I look on that previous presentation, but certainly above the ASX 300, which we're not in yet. Stainless steel demand is burgeoning. It's above 10%, and you would have seen LME stockpiles going down. And EV sales, which Eddie Hagel talked upon this morning, are up over 150%. And we're heading towards probably 5 million units being produced in 2021. But I think, going to increases in market capitalisation and things like that, what it does show, and this is not Mincor specific, that if you have a discovery, like we've had at Cassini, and then you head into development, and we are well into development and now closer to production than development, and you have favourable conditions, you get support from shareholders. And I'd like to point out Wailu Metals at 15% and IGO, who have been very supportive. Again, very similar to Mr Parsons, it must be a Kiwi thing. We do like to go back and check what we said last year and what we delivered. And I can say that, of course, this slide would say that all promises have been delivered. We've put in the project financing, but with that, I'd actually like to acknowledge the board of Mincor. They've had to make a number of courageous decisions and early decisions, but the team for putting up those opportunities for the board to make those decisions are now implementing. And so also some very important stakeholders that ordered gear early, such as Pit and Portal. So I'm trying to get as many plugs in here as I can, but Pit and Portal and Emeco, who really got ahead of the curve, and BHP as well. And despite all of the challenges that we've heard about labour market, I can report that Mincor has a zero headcount turnover. So that's been very pleasing for us. But I think one of the highlights for the year, and in fact in Mincor's history, and certainly in my career, was the opening of the Woodall Decline, which was in honour of the legendary Dr Roy Woodall. And there are a number of connections between Dr Roy Woodall and Mincor. And so I really want to note that Barbara Woodall was extremely supportive of us naming the Cassini Decline the Woodall Decline, and also David Woodall in putting that together. And in that, I've got a little video of our opening that hopefully works. On behalf of my fellow directors, our management team, and who I can see out there, many wonderful, dedicated, hard-working people that actually make up the Mincor team across our Kambalda nickel operations, I welcome you. And it gives me great pleasure to be here for the opening of the Cassini mine.
I just said you're all welcome onto our land, sitting down on our lands, it's okay. And this is our cleansing process, and we've always did this in our people for hundreds of generations of our people.
Western Australia's success as a mining jurisdiction is because we're able to take technology and apply it to solve problems. And we believe we can do exactly the same thing in the battery space. And so we're very pleased to show our support to be here today to open another new mine, creating 200 jobs here in the goldfields.
In recognition of Dr Woodall's outstanding contribution to the Australian mining industry over many years, and in particular his groundbreaking discovery of nickel in Kambalda, I am delighted to announce that we will name the main decline at the Cassini nickel mine the Woodall Decline in his honour.
Okay, so that was a fantastic event, and clearly there are some faces in there that are especially good for radio, not TV. One of the other promises that we made, and I flippantly called it the Golden Mile, it's not technically a mile, it's 1.1 kilometres, but you get the drift, was the space in between the Long Mine and our Durkin North mine, which has been completely undrilled. And we promised that by this time at Diggers we would have commenced drilling. Web Drill have done a fantastic job in mobilising to site, and in an area where we weren't expecting significant results, more results to help our understanding of that space. 3 out of the first 5 drill holes have hit massive sulphides, and so I'll talk about that a little bit more. Just to remind you where we are, we've got great infrastructure around us. We're now have just energised the mine with TransAlta and BHP. So again, feeding into what BHP have been doing around decarbonisation. We'll be spending $11 million on exploration in this region, and there's infrastructure galore from power lines, roads, water pipelines, rail. We're quite blessed in terms of where we sit. And just remember, over this period before Mincor discovered Cassini, over around 12 years, only about $12 million was spent on greenfields exploration in the most prolific nickel belt in Australia. We're also, as a company, heading along the sustainability path, and this year we hope to release our first sustainability report. We definitely have a low carbon footprint with our type of nickel going into batteries. In fact, nickel concentrate going into nickel sulphate ultimately is the best form. And we went through ESG approval with our finances. And that's probably an important point to know for anyone looking at finance now. It's not just having to go through the credit department in banks, which is quite often called the deal prevention department. It's the environmental. You have to get ESG approval before credit will even look. And we got that ticked off. And importantly, most of our spend is in the goldfields. In fact, it's greater than 70%. It's closer towards that 95%, so we do spend locally. Very safe operations, but that doesn't come without a lot of effort from our people. 6 years LTI free, but what I'm looking at there is those lead indicators which show since we made final investment decision in November, you can see that we've been increasing the number of job risk assessments, task observations, all those important things. Our strategy is pretty simple. It's discover, develop and then deliver. We're now in the develop stage. We'll be delivering first nickel concentrate is what we're planning is late in the March quarter. And those of you who know people in the mining space, if you say late in the March quarter, you're not definitely saying it's not January, it's not February, it's probably going to be March. And if it's in April, you say, well, I meant the March quarterly report. So we're definitely heading towards March, and we'll ramp up to at least a 16,000 tonne producer. Very low capex, but we're already gone back on the loop and we're in that discovery phase again. So very similar to the Bellevue story. Whilst we're developing and producing, we're also exploring. And so our advantage, and this is probably the why invest slide, we're funded, got low capex to start, $68 million to get started. Right commodity, we think we're in the right time, looking at the market and the way that's moving. A very experienced team, and we have production and some significant exploration upside. So have I taken a little bit of poetic license with the title of this slide? Yes, I have, calling it Mincor to Musk. Now, we probably will, if you are driving a Tesla, and I know Stu drives a Tesla, a very good Tesla, Peter Bradford drives a Tesla, Eddie Hagel drives a Tesla, a lot of nickel in that battery, and with us supplying into the BHP supply chain, there will be Mincor in the Musk vehicle. But this is actually something I've been banging on about for probably 3 years plus, that vehicle manufacturers are going to come further upstream. And the first insight for that was when I was at Mincor Resources as a non-exec director. We cut the first supply agreement for lithium hydroxide with Tesla. That took a year, and it's a fascinating experience to be involved with Elon Musk and his approvals, but he's got some fantastic people around him. So I have to congratulate Eddie and the BHP team for doing that, because it's not an easy task to get to that point. But once you get one in the door, I think more will follow. So maybe Campbell to Kia, could be Mincor to Mercedes. I'm trying to think of all the different car names at the moment. I know if you're an investment bank, it'll be Mincor to Maserati. It'll be something along those lines. So where's our strategic advantage? And hey, have I taken some more poetic license and whacking a Tesla sign in there? Of course I have. But we are very important to the nickel supply chain in Western Australia. There's not too many integrated nickel businesses around the world. You would have seen a bullet point up in Eddie's presentation about the Kambalda nickel concentrator. They're working very hard at the maintenance they're required to start. They will be ready in February. So they're ready a month ahead of schedule, and so that's going very well. And as also Eddie pointed out, the Kalgoorlie nickel smelter was designed around Kambalda concentrate, and that's exactly what we'll be producing. Very high iron MgO ratio and very low deleterious elements. Slight repeat of the slide, but the previous slide, but the important point here is that the mill itself can do around 1.6 million tonnes per annum. We've just signed a preliminary agreement for 600,000 tonnes, and quietly we can actually do a little bit more under the contract than 600, which we probably will. But there are opportunities to ramp that up if we find more ore, which we're pretty confident. The contract expires in December 2025. But just to be clear, we're selling nickel concentrate. So we use the Kambalda concentrator, but as soon as the concentrate comes out the pipe, it gets sold to BHP. So the golden mile of nickel. This is pretty sort of exciting stuff for our geology team. And you can see there a fan drilling program that we have implemented with WebDrill in July. We actually put out an announcement yesterday. I was very glad that it went out yesterday because I hate seeing presentations where suddenly there's an intersection on the day of the presentation. From 45 minutes of receiving the assay results, we got the announcement out yesterday. So 3 intersections now. All assays received and very, very high grade. As I said, wasn't where our largest confidence area is. If I was a betting person, I would suspect that Durkin North is going to have extensions. And just to remind you of why this is so special, and by the way, miners aren't actually used to inclining, going up. It's a new sort of task for them to do. Mostly they go down. And that's been interesting, and we've gone through porphyry now and we're into basalt. That's really important geologically. Where you have that porphyry basalt, you can find nickel sulfides and significant nickel sulfides. But just reminding you of the history, Western Mining used to own all this area, and then IGO was on one side, on the long side, Mincor was on the other side, and there's sort of this demilitarised zone in between that the parties didn't explore together. And then when we purchased Long off IGO, we were able to consolidate. So this is truly exciting. If I was to put Cassini into that space, it would look very small. So that's some news flow to watch over the next few months. But in terms of development, you can see there that we're 3/4 up on the incline heading towards Durkin. We've completed a raise bore. We're 3/4 of the way down the Durkin decline, and we'll be connecting up. And we'll actually have first ore later this year, but not first concentrate until we build up the stockpiles until around late March quarter. So Cassini is certainly garners a lot of attention, and so it should. It's that first greenfields discovery, and again, humbling that that the exploration team won the AMEC Prospector of the Year award. And when you think of some of the ore bodies that have won that, you had Western Areas who won with Spotted Quoll. You had Sirius with the Nova Bollinger, which is now IGO, is successfully operating, and then Cassini last year. So that was a really important achievement for the team. And just something to watch, and geologists aren't necessarily the most inventive people when it comes to names, but Location 1, we'll rename that because it'll become a better target if you rename it. But we're going to rename that, and just watch that space. We're looking at a channel there of around, we're trying to confirm a channel that we think goes for about 3.5 kilometres, and we happen to hit some very thin but massive sulfides on the way. Again, that wasn't our expectation. It was about confirming the channel. So just watch that space over the next while. The important thing with Cassini, as we've gone deeper, and we're quite shallow in respect of Kambalda, it's got thicker and higher grade. So the tonnes per vertical metre has certainly increased. We will be drilling underground from Cassini, again very similar to Bellevue, because it's more efficient, it's quicker, and we'll be plugging in some of those gaps, but we'll also be drilling into what we call Cassini North, where we've hit 2.5 metres at 6.6% nickel. It is far easier for us to drill that from underground, and anyone who knows Kambalda, you only grow resources really from underground drilling. And this is my favourite slide. It's the one my company secretary gets a little bit excited about because she doesn't want me breaching the JORC code. I'm not a geologist, so I don't know how I can breach it. But so I'm not putting out a target here. What I'm trying to do is using factual statistical information for you to make up your own mind around where Cassini could possibly go. What we've got here is bubbles of where mining resources started, pre-mining resources, but where they ultimately ended up. Otter Yuan went from 17,000 tonnes to 317,000 tonnes. Every komatiite, lava channel, nickel sulphide mine has grown from underground. We haven't even started mining Cassini yet, and you can see where it sits there in the grade. The average grade around the world is 1%, so we're already four times higher than that. So make up your mind where you think that can go. We've certainly got a view of where we think it can go, and the infrastructure that we're putting in place is for well above 10 years from workshops. And you can see there with the decline how far advanced we are. We've got a ventilation decline and then also for trucking as well, and we're in the middle of a raise bore for the Woodall decline. Nearly finished, so just a little bit on financing. We've now completed that. We've hit all the conditions precedent. We expect to draw that down in October. Interest rate of 3.7%, which goes to the quality of the credit, yeah, that's all ready to go. A little bit on the nickel market very quickly. I touched upon it at the beginning, but certainly nickel concentrate is the cleanest and less carbon intensive than any other method of getting nickel ultimately, or nickel sulphate, into a battery. We have very little ground disturbance. We're underground. We're connected to that grid power with TransAlta, who are heading along that green path, and our product ultimately goes into that nickel sulphate. So we're in the right spot. So to round out, high growth. We're in a premier nickel address in Kambalda, Kalgoorlie. We've got a pretty simple business plan, strong economics. We've got exploration hits. We're funded, and watch this space. Next year we'll have some concentrate. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that great presentation, David. You look very well positioned. Do we have a question from the audience for David at all? If not, I can dream one up. Dealing into the BHP supply chain, is that restrictive for you at all, or is it does it just allow you to deliver in whatever you like to deliver in?
We had the option. Look, I've tried to buy the Kambalda nickel concentrator of Nickel West probably 25 times and been told no. And so it would be fantastic if we could own it. But the way that we've set up the agreement with BHP, we can expand into a 1.6 million tonne facility. It's designed for our concentrate. It meant that we didn't have to go through 2 years of permitting for tailings dams and to build a new nickel concentrator, and to be dovetailing into that battery supply chain. And we think the margins are really good at the concentrate level. If you're getting upwards around 80% payable on nickel, there's not a lot more margin once you have to go through smelting and refining. The next biggest margin growth is in producing sulphate. So no, it's actually a good outcome. We did have offers from 2 Swiss traders to fund us into building a concentrator, but those that know traders very well, they've got more hooks in a fisherman's tackle box.
Thank you very much for the presentation to David.